Hi guys, I'm Kya, and on this supersized edition of How to Kill, we're taking down the king of the monsters himself, the Japanese giant known as Godzilla. Since he burst onto the scene in 1954, Godzilla has gone from nuclear nightmare to kid-friendly superhero, and he's gotten his fair share of scars along the way. But what would it take to topple this radioactive reptile once and for all? Well, they say he's gotta go, so pick up a bus and throw it back down, because today we're gonna tell you how to kill Godzilla. Over the last 60 years, Godzilla has appeared in over 30 movies and countless cartoons, video games, and comics, including one where he went to hell without dying. He's fought King Kong, Killer Moths, and Matthew Broderick, perhaps his greatest foe.
That's a lot of fish.
But it almost didn't happen because Godzilla definitively died in his first appearance at the hands of a superweapon called the Oxygen Destroyer. The Toho Company's original Gojira film is a far cry from the cuddly cartoon character Godzilla would become. Made less than a decade after the end of World War II, director Ishiro Honda envisioned his monster as a living embodiment of the atomic bomb, an unthinkable, unstoppable, nuclear-powered nightmare. When Godzilla awakens from his slumber and makes his way to the Japanese mainland, their best and brightest scientists struggle to find a way to stop it. Bullets and bombs just bounce off him, death charges do nothing, and when they set up a massive electric fence on the coastline, Godzilla just pulls the spitting high-tension wires down. There's only one weapon that can kill this colossal kaiju, but its creator Dr. Serizawa is terrified of the devastation his Oxygen Destroyer would unleash. I don't know what's so scary about turning some fish into skeletons, but I mean, hey, I'm not a scientist and I don't have a cool eye patch either. Yet. After witnessing the destruction Godzilla inflicts on Tokyo, Serizawa is finally convinced to use his super weapon. He straps on a scuba suit and activates the destroyer on the ocean floor, disintegrating Godzilla and sacrificing himself in the process. Serizawa's secrets died with him, and it's a shame because just 1 year later, a brand new Godzilla emerged from the sea to stomp through Osaka. Luckily, the Air Force was able to trap him in an iceberg and drop a mountain on him. But it was only a temporary fix. Godzilla would return again and again and again, and as even worse monsters reared their ugly heads, Godzilla became humanity's protector. Throughout the 60s and 70s, the fearsome king of the monsters kinda lost his edge. Becoming a dad will do that to you, I guess. The series' popularity started to wane, so in 1984, Toho rebooted Godzilla into a towering terror once more. He was bigger, badder, and a whole lot tougher, but he had one fatal flaw: a broken heart. Godzilla actually dies twice in the Heisei-era Godzilla films, but only one of them sticks. In Godzilla vs. Mecha Godzilla 2, the Big G faces off against a new version of his robot doppelganger, which actually manages to kill him with a barrage of lasers, paralyzer missiles, and electric shocks that destroy the second brain Godzilla keeps in his butt. For safekeeping. Fortunately, Rodan was able to resurrect him, but this does count as a death even if it doesn't last long. The big guy died for good in 1995's Godzilla vs. Destroyer, where he battles a byproduct of Serizawa's long-lost Oxygen Destroyer, hence the name. Destroyer isn't actually the one who does him in, though. After years on the rampage, the nuclear reactor that is Godzilla's heart is undergoing a catastrophic meltdown, threatening to blow up the entire planet. The body of burning Godzilla is glowing with red radioactive energy, and he uses his new power to defeat Destroyer just before his heart finally gives out. The resulting fallout decimates Tokyo, but his son sucks it all up and survives to carry on his father's lumbering legacy. After they killed Godzilla, Toho took a break from the franchise. But over in America, TriStar Pictures was working on a reboot that would surely blow the doors off the box office and usher in a new era of monster madness in the States. Yeah, no, that didn't happen. 1998's Godzilla died at the box office, and the titular star died after a barrage of plain old missiles. Where do I begin with Roland Emmerich's ill-fated 1998 Godzilla movie? Its annoying ad campaign that took shots at Jurassic Park? The extremely obnoxious characters who are joking and quipping as Godzilla rains death and destruction on New York City?
Well, Audrey, look at this. He trashed the garden. Oh, man. Now I'm pissed.
Literally not the time for jokes.
Whoa. This is where the Knicks, get showered and everything.
The way Emmerich included obvious parodies of Siskel and Ebert as a f you for giving his terrible movies terrible reviews.
The emptiness of Godzilla was one of the worst achievements, if you can call it that, of the year.
I'm with you there, Gene.
Look, the film has a lot of problems, but none bigger than the big guy himself, or herself in this case. 1998's Godzilla was slimmer and smaller than her Japanese cousin. She looked like an iguana crossed with a raptor rendered with the best CGI 1998 had to offer, which wasn't all that great.
What are you doing?
She could sprint and burrow through the city streets, but she lacked her namesake's awe-inspiring presence, which is why fans mockingly dubbed her Gino, or Godzilla in name only. Ouch. The producers took the monster out of King of the Monsters, robbing her of Godzilla's trademark atomic breath and rendering her vulnerable to standard issue army weapons. Matthew Broderick and his little pals managed to trap her in the cables of the Brooklyn Bridge, where she bleeds to death after a barrage of plain old missiles. That's right, not a superweapon, ancient evil, or alien technology. Just $40 million worth of taxpayer-funded firepower. I'm not impressed, guys. I'm not even against the idea of missiles killing Godzilla, but they've got to be special, like the killer drillers that took him down in 2001. Toho was deeply embarrassed by the 1998 movie, so much so that they actually brought the American Zilla back in their rejuvenated Japanese series, just so she could get completely murked by the real Godzilla in like 20 seconds. Toho's Millennium series were mostly standalone films, but they couldn't resist giving the Big G a huge power upgrade. In Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, which by the way is the greatest movie title ever, the original Godzilla is resurrected by the vengeful souls of innocents killed during World War II. Earth's guardian kaiju team up to stop him, but the fatal blow comes from special missiles designed to drill through Godzilla's hide. They open up a hole in his chest that prevents him from unleashing his atomic breath, and with no way to release the pressure, Godzilla explodes in a burst of radioactive energy. Leaving only his disembodied heart on the ocean floor. One problem, it's still beating. Check the heart, guys. Each incarnation of Godzilla is less vulnerable than the last, and even his most recent sightings have proven tough to take down. In 2014, America finally got a proper badass version to call its own, and the heroic Monsterverse Godzilla lived to fight another day. Presumably against the king-size Kong from Skull Island. Back in Japan, Toho returned with Shin Godzilla, a terrifying new incarnation who reflected the fears of a post-Fukushima world. The government was able to get their shit together in time to drop a few buildings on him and pump some coagulant down his throat, but all that did was freeze the god of destruction, leaving him standing tall in the middle of Tokyo. And I do mean tall, because at 389 feet, this was the biggest Godzilla we'd ever seen, at least until the anime that came out the next year. In the post-apocalyptic Planet of Monsters, Godzilla has driven humanity away from Earth. 20,000 years later, returning soldiers managed to trap Godzilla and penetrate his shield with EMP probes, only to learn the monster they just imploded was a much smaller clone after the real deal burst from the ground and wrecks all their shit. We'll see how that saga plays out in the coming years, as well as whatever the Monsterverse has in store for us. But whether he's a hero, a villain, a stomper, or a savior, Godzilla is one of the most memorable monsters in all of cinema, and as history shows again and again, he's damn hard to kill. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Now I want to know, who is your favorite kaiju Godzilla's ever faced? Gigan, Anguirus, King Caesar, or are there any others you'd like to see him fight? Leave a comment, let me know, follow us on Twitter at NowNerdOfficial, and as always,